We have another question from Desiree Bingham in Arizona, and she asks, I'm sure all the good questions have been answered, so I'll ask you something not related to the podcast. What's your idea of a perfect date? Please don't say April 25th, as that's already been taken. Oh, how about April 26th? No, my idea of a perfect date is a lot of talking. Yeah, you want like a picturesque location. A lot of people go to dinner for dates, and yeah, that's usually involved. I'll go to dinner with somebody, but I want the time afterwards. I want a more quiet location to have a conversation. I want to get to know a person. I want to know how their mind works, what they're interested in. I want to hear them laugh. Laughter's important. I joke around, despite the way I seem on the podcast. I joke around a lot in my personal life. So someone has to have a great sense of humor, and I have to see that. So my idea of the perfect date, I guess, would be maybe something to eat, and then going out somewhere and just hanging out, sitting on a bench in a nice park, or taking a walk together around the city, and just talking about everything, asking all the questions you want to ask, and just learning about another person. That's what really does it for me. I used to think the old school way that the perfect date was dinner and a movie. And what I learned very quickly was there's not a lot of time for talking when you're eating dinner and then you're watching a movie that you're supposed to be quiet through. I guess you hope the date continues after that, and that's where you get the talking in. But for me, a lot of a date revolves around location and conversation. Phil Adams asks if I'm related to the Fight Doctor. No, I'm not. We share the same last name, but there's no relation there, at least not that I'm aware of. It would be pretty awesome to learn that I was related to him. But no, as far as I know, I am not, and I never met Muhammad Ali either, although I would have loved to. But no relation there. As far as I know, I'm not related to anyone who has any kind of celebrity or fame. So there you go. Beth Johnson of Salt Lake City, Utah asks, what is the one case you've covered that still sticks with you that you still think about? I still think about all of them, honestly. I don't know if any stick in my head more than other ones. It all depends on the day of the week, what I'm doing, what mood I'm in. But one case will pop up one day and the next day it's a different one. They all stick with me. Every day anytime I see someone mention one of them, I'm hoping there's new information. I'm hoping there was a break. I'm hoping we're closer to solving it. I've previously mentioned Candace Hiltz, the Fort Worth 3, Garrett Phillips, Sky Metawalla, Suzanne Joven, Tara Calico, Kurt Sova, Rico Harris, Lauren Spear, Jesse Ross. These all stick with me. I mean, just essentially look at all the episodes I've done. They all stick with me. One that's been popping up a lot lately, and it's probably because of where I live, it's not very far away, is Aisha Degree's disappearance. That's such a bizarre case, and it's so sad that such a cute and sweet little girl vanished, and we don't have any answers about this. Something obviously twisted went on there. Somebody has a lot more information than they're sharing, so lately, Aisha's case is one that's been sticking in my head a lot. Melissa Fogle of Georgia asks, if you could have one case be solved, know all the answers, who did it, why, etc., what case would it be? Again, I've sort of touched on this, so I'll give you a different case this time. Let's go a little more recent. I'm going to go look at episode 22, the death of George Reeves, who played Superman in the 1950s. I became fascinated with this kid as a child. My father was a fan of George Reeves when he was a child. He never believed that George committed suicide. Looking at the evidence, I can't tell you whether or not he did, but there's enough information to suggest it's possible that that's not what happened there. So I'd love to know what happened with that case. I mean, that's one of Hollywood's dirty secrets that's been hidden away for so long. So to find the answers to that case, that would be wonderful. I know George's mother went on for years after and never accepted what happened to her son, and she's since passed away. So it's not like the answers to this case are really going to relieve her, but perhaps it could give some peace, and it would also maybe point some fingers about other things that have gone down in Hollywood over the years, for which a lot of questions need to be answered. You can simply look at the Me Too movement that's been going on. Everyone knows Hollywood's got a dark underbelly. It's how deep it goes that most people don't know. So for a Hollywood conspiracy or for a Hollywood lie to be exposed, I'd love to see that. I think we need more transparency when it comes to that world. Tom Burns of Denver asks, was there a single case that got you started, or got you hooked, or just general interest? For me, it was the Brandon Lawson case. That started it all, and still the one I wonder about most. Missy Beavers is catching up, though. I mentioned Kurt Sova and the Zodiac Killer. Those are two cases that definitely grabbed my attention early in my life and sunk their hooks into me. But I went through a lot of my life being interested in true crime, but not really doing anything with it. I didn't keep a blog. I wasn't planning to do a podcast. I mean, that sort of evolved after listening to a lot of them. So for cases that have really hooked me and got me interested, there's probably a bunch of them, but one that sticks out in my mind at the moment is the Brandon Lawson case. There's such confusion around that case. Nobody really knows what went down there. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of rumor. That's definitely a case that grabbed my attention. Outside of that, the Fort Worth 3 definitely grabbed my attention. There's probably innumerable cases that I could tell you that have grabbed my attention over the years. Zodiac, definitely. So there's probably never really going to be an answer to this question where I'm going to be able to give you just one that grabbed my attention. There were hundreds of them that grabbed my attention. The next question comes from Stephanie Dumon of Strongstown, Pennsylvania, and she asks, I would like to hear about you, just things about your life. Are you married? Children? Where did you grow up? Favorite foods, hobbies, etc. What is your favorite unsolved case? What case most inspired you to cover true crime? I love your show, and I can't wait for the next episode. Okay, starting at the top, no, I am not married. I have never been married, and as a result, I have no children either. Children have always been a debated topic with me. There's been a part of me that's wanted children at different points in my life, and there's been a part of me that hasn't. I did date someone who had 2 children, and that was a new experience for me, and I grew to have a great deal of affection and care for those children. But I never really wanted to procreate. I never wanted to have my own child. That may change as I get older, as that biological need starts to manifest. But at this moment, no. That's not to say that I don't like children. The world's a messed up place. I know that I'm busy and semi-selfish. So the idea of, can I provide them with what they currently would need or what would make them happy? I don't know. And I would be afraid to have a child and make them unhappy or to mess them up. You know, so many of us carry problems from our childhood, and I don't want to contribute that to anybody. Where did I grow up? I grew up in a small town on Long Island called East Moriches. It's on the South Shore. It's in Suffolk County. Very small town. My town had, 3 delis, a gas station, 2 or 3 stores. The school that I went to was kindergarten through 8th grade. And then when you graduated 8th, you had to pick a high school in one of the 3 closest towns to attend. I ended up going to West Hampton Beach High School. So yes, I spent time out in the Hamptons, but I certainly wasn't from that rich side of life. My parents were blue-collar workers and still are. So yeah, I grew up on Long Island. I went to a lot of concerts in the city when I got older. I used to love going into Manhattan. I still love the trains, something I miss here. In the house that I grew up in New York, you could stand in my kitchen at night and watch the train go by in the distance. I miss the horn of the train. I miss being on the train. Trains definitely are something I always liked. So I miss New York, but that's where I grew up. Favorite food? I eat like a child. I do not have an adult's diet. So my favorite foods are going to be like pizza and French fries, and I probably eat them a lot more than I should. Hobbies? Reading, writing, music, movies, all that kind of stuff. Watching interviews. I love to see people being interviewed. I don't know what it is, but I love to hear people talk. Another thing that I do is with my movies, a lot of them have commentary tracks on them. I love to turn those on, and I love to just hear how something was made, how they filmed something, the director's point of view, the actor's point of view. That stuff fascinates me. I used to love that show Inside the Actor's Studio. I love a good in-depth interview that challenges the person being interviewed and isn't just softball questions. Another thing that I do is I spend a lot of time on YouTube. I need things to lighten the load. I need things to make me feel better sometimes. There's a channel on there called Game Grumps. It began as 2 guys playing video games and laughing and telling jokes. It's evolved. There's so many of them now. They do so many different things. It's one of my favorite things in the world. If you want to laugh, Go on there, find a game you played as a kid or a game that you have an interest in, and just watch some episodes of them playing it. It makes me laugh. Maybe it'll make you laugh. What is my favorite unsolved case? I always feel weird calling it a favorite because it's twisted, but it's the Zodiac Killer. That's one I'm definitely drawn to. If you want to step a little bit outside of true crime, something like the Bermuda Triangle has always fascinated me. I love the myth and the rumor around that. Is there something there? Is it just electromagnetic waves? Is there something beneath the sea? Was it Atlantis in that? There's so many questions about that, but I remember being in kindergarten, and while kids were reading books about like the Berenstain Bears, I was reading books about the Bermuda Triangle. What case most inspired you? I've sort of touched on this, but Kurt Sova, Zodiac Killer, Aisha Degree, there were so many of them. To choose one is hard to do. True crime in general fascinates me. I need answers to questions. I've existed this way in my life for the longest time. I am told that one of the archetypes of my personality is the detective. It certainly makes sense. I'm somebody who likes to watch shows like How It's Made. I hear about something, I'm going to Google it. I want to know how it got made, who made it, why it was made, where it was created, how do you make it? I love that stuff. So true crime in general is driven for me by the unknown, and I have a persistent need to know. The next question is from Suzy Shanks in Scotland, and she asks, I just wanted to know how you managed to do such a fantastic quality podcast all on your own. It's really so good. You're always so respectful. I don't know how you managed to do it all yourself. A lot of work, really. A lot of research. There's rare moments when I am not researching. If I've just released a case on a Monday, so I just yesterday sat here for 6 hours and recorded it. After releasing it, uploading it, putting it everywhere, probably 30, 40 minutes after that, I was on my laptop researching another case. It's about time devotion and dedication, and it's about inclusion. One of the problems that I have with true crime podcasts in general is a lot of them, and I'm not saying all of them because there are great ones out there, a lot of them choose their theory and then write their episode. So the episode gets slanted to that theory. They leave out information that contradicts that theory. They include information that can't be proven because it supports that theory. I don't want to do that. I want you to hear all the angles. I want to give you a couple of theories. I want you to decide what happened because ultimately they're unsolved. We don't know. So I would say what makes the podcast the way it is time and dedication, but also you guys. You guys tell me what you think about episodes. You ask questions that I didn't think to ask. You bring up theories that I had not heard or didn't find in my research. So you guys push me to do more, to spend more time doing it. When I began doing this podcast, I thought it was going to be like, oh, okay, a couple hours a week. Well, it's like a full-time job, and I already have one of those. So I probably spend 30 to 40 hours a week working on this podcast, and I love doing it. I'm certainly not complaining about it, but I think you have to be willing to devote the time and attention to the case. And you can't just read a couple of theories on it and say, oh, well, I'll choose one of these. That's what I'll go with, and I won't go too in depth. Go in depth. Push yourself. If you've got a question that's never been asked, ask it. That's the way I try and do it. The next question comes from Carolina and Chris Young, located in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. How do you choose the cases you research? Was any particular case the one that got you interested in true crime? Well, I've sort of touched on that one, so I'm going to focus mostly on how I choose my cases. I do not have a great scientific method for choosing my cases. I do it mostly on gut instinct. I have a big list. When it's time to research a new case, I look at that list. Sometimes I'll look at a case 10 times before I actually cover it. And the best way I can describe it to you is sometimes a case just jumps out at me. So I'll look through that list over and over again. I'll do some, I have a lot of research files saved on cases I haven't done yet. So I'll open those files. I'll look at some of the research. I'll see what it stirs in me that week. I can't tell you the amount of times I've looked at a case, examined the research, and been like, I don't know, just not this week. And then all of a sudden, one day I'm like, okay, what case am I doing? And I look at that research and I'm like, this is it. This is the case this week. So I accumulate every case I can find. I make long lists. I do the research in my spare time. And then when I'm choosing a case, I look at that research. It's not as in-depth as it's going to get, but it gives me a general idea of what's going on. And the research will speak to me. The case, I think, in many ways, chooses me. Elisa Lam's a good one. I just released that one. Probably been looking at that case for years before I did the podcast. So this particular week, it just happened to speak to me. The next question comes from Damian Nichols in Williamstown, New Jersey. And he asks, what is the most disturbing case you have ever covered? I've covered a lot of disturbing cases. Suzanne Jovin's murder disturbs me. Arliss Perry disturbs me. Candace Hiltz disturbs me. Brandon Lawson, Brian Schaefer. I mean, look at that case. Where did that guy possibly go? He's in a bar. They have him on camera entering it. He never exits as far as we know. I mean, there was a side door that he could have gone out of that didn't have a camera on it, but why would he go out that door? A case like that, just the ones that are extremely bizarre. Yes, I deal with sometimes straight up, this person was murdered in this way, and that is very disturbing. But there's a lot of cases where we don't have a clue what happened. I mean, it's just this person's gone, or this person got murdered in such a strange way. How did someone do this? Why would they do this? How did they get away with it for so long? Yeah, there's a lot of cases that I would consider the most disturbing. But off the top of my head, Arliss Perry, Candace Hiltz, Brian Schaefer. Jennifer Sweeter from Houston, Texas. Apologies if I mispronounced your last name. I couldn't decide if it was Sweeter or Swader, but she asks, what is your favorite thing to do when you want to relax? Probably lay on my couch and watch the dumbest thing I can get my hands on. Just something that does not require a lot of thought, is going to make me laugh, and is going to entertain me. I have the TV series Adventure Time on Blu-ray. I watch that quite a bit because if you want something where you don't have to focus a lot, that's a good choice. I previously mentioned Game Grumps. They're another one. And a podcast that I actually left off my list, but I tend to listen to it and watch it through YouTube, is the Joe Rogan Experience. He does interviews with really fascinating people. And to just kick back and listen to someone talk about the incredible things they've done in their life while I'm sitting on my couch not doing anything, that can be relaxing. It's sort of like living vicariously through them. Jennifer also asks, what is my pet case, the one that drives me the most crazy? Zodiac Killer, probably. I know I've said that multiple times on here, but it sticks with me. It's always been there. Another one, I can't believe I haven't mentioned this yet. Another case that I have researched and read about extensively and is solved, and I think is poignant considering what's going on in the United States today, is Columbine. The next question comes from Diane Padilla, who's located in Denver, Colorado. And she asks, what is the strangest case you've covered? I've covered a couple of strange ones, in my opinion. Brian Schaefer's case is definitely strange. Aisha Degree's case is bizarre. Arliss Perry's case is strange and disturbing. Elisa Lam's case, interestingly, I think, is very disturbing, but not as strange as people have made it out to be. I think a lack of grasp on mental illness has made that case seem much more bizarre and creepy than it actually is. It's a very sad case, but I don't know that it's as creepy or bizarre as people think that it is. A case like Dana Bradley in Canada, Newfoundland. That case has been around for so long. The police have spent so much money investigating it, and they cannot find an answer. This was a young girl who got picked up hitchhiking and was assaulted and murdered. How the answers weren't found, they've got DNA, they've been looking forever, they've had tons of suspects. To me, it's very disturbing when something like that happens. I would also make a callback to early episodes like Tara Calico, where a lot of information has come out about that case. There's actually an entire podcast that revolves around it. It seems almost like what happened there is almost known. It just cannot be proven, and that's disturbing. And episode 3, Lauren Spear. Since Lauren vanished, someone has been convicted of a murder which took place and happens to have circumstances that very closely share Lauren's disappearance circumstances. I think extensive digging can probably shake that loose, but that case is disturbing nonetheless. Just the idea of a young girl away at college walking down the street and then she's never seen again. So those are certainly cases that disturb me, and I would guess disturb everybody. The next question comes from Christa Bonville, located in Canada, and she asks, have you ever taken on a case for an episode that you couldn't finish due to the circumstances, details of someone's death or disappearance? Yes. I've taken on several, but it's usually not due to the circumstances or the details. It's usually due to a lack of information. I don't want to do a podcast episode that's 15 minutes long. I want to give you as much detail as I can. Sadly, a lot of the cases out there, especially ones that I get requested a lot, they don't have the detail. They don't have the information. You can go, I previously mentioned the Charlie Project. You can go on there and look at the page for someone's disappearance and find 18 paragraphs of what happened in their final hours. You can look at someone else and it'll only say something like, last seen on the corner of this street, and that's it. Well, that's hard to work with. I do have plans revolving around my YouTube channel to start releasing weekly videos if I can, maybe 10 minutes long. That'll be, the top 3 strange disappearances, the top 5 bizarre murders, cases that I really want to cover extensively, but the information simply isn't available currently. But I'd like to get their names out there. I'd like to bring attention to them in whatever way I possibly could. The next question, and I apologize in advance because I know I'm going to butcher your name, comes from Tunia El Zynga in the Netherlands. And she asks, what made you decide to do a crime show? Have you ever thought of working in law enforcement? What made me decide to do it was that I was constantly talking to my friends and family about these cases that it was starting to drive them crazy. They would basically not want to discuss any of this stuff with me because I could go on about it for hours. In addition to that, I was listening to a lot of true crime podcasts, and I felt like, I like the way this person does this, but I don't like the way they do that. Or I like this approach, but I don't like the way they end it. I like the middle, not the beginning. So I thought, rather than going to these pages and complaining, or rather than leaving a bad review, or rather than just doing something negative, why not turn it into something positive and do my own? I figured that way, there's probably other people like me who want to hear it covered the way I want to hear it covered. So I might as well take a shot, cover it that way, and see what happens. So that's pretty much why I did it. I had a lot of true crime experience. There were things I wanted to investigate. There were things I wanted to talk about. And there were ways I wanted people to talk about it, and they weren't. As for whether or not I have thought of working in law enforcement, I have. I've thought about it. I haven't actually done it. But I've had multiple people in my personal life tell me that I should pursue that. It's something that I'm currently weighing. There's a possibility you could see me pursue law enforcement, but here's my problem. I don't feel that I'd be a great asset as someone pulling people over, giving tickets, or just walking around town making sure there's no trouble. I think my best uses would be as a detective, and it would take a while to earn my spot doing that, and to gain the knowledge and experience I would need to do it. In addition to that, as someone who's never worked in law enforcement, I am sure I possess misconceptions about how that job is done and the way that it should be handled without being aware of policies and procedures and laws that they are required to follow. So it's entirely possible I could go into law enforcement and then in the midst of it realize I don't want to do this. So maybe someday I'll look more into it, but for now, I'm all right not doing it. Alex from Sydney, Australia asks, what's your favorite comfort food? That's a tough one to answer. I have a lot of comfort foods, but I would say the thing that I crave most when I'm feeling down or I need something is a burger. I love burgers. I get my burgers medium. I love them with bacon on them. I put mustard, no ketchup, lettuce, tomato, onion, blue cheese, whatever I can get on there to make it even better. I'm just a burger lover. So my comfort food's burgers. The next question is from Claire Bailey in Southampton, England. Regarding the Brandon Lawson case, there is one thing that's always puzzled me. I know there's a lot in that case that should. When the police arrived at his truck, it was locked with no keys in it. How did the officer put the hazard lights on? I think there's some debate about that situation, and I don't remember in my episode which angle I selected or whether I said it was speculated. It may have been something I brushed over. My understanding is that when the officer arrived, the truck was not locked. So he was able to open the door and turn on the hazard lights. He then locked it since it was abandoned on the side of the road, and he didn't want someone to come along and steal the stereo or something. So my understanding is it was not locked upon his arrival. But there's probably discussion about it in newspaper articles where some say it was locked when he got there, some say it wasn't. But it had to have been unlocked for him to turn the lights on in the first place. The final question comes from Shani Scott, located in Utah, and it is, what's one case that haunts you? I know all the cases are important. They are. Every case I cover carries equal importance in my mind. I'm haunted by all of them. I don't want to pick one. I don't want to say Candace Hiltz haunts me more, or Sky Metawala haunts me more, or Rico Harris haunts me more. They all haunt. These cases stick in my head. I think about them all day. I have dreams about them. I make notes about them. I'll probably go back and touch on some of them in the future. They're all haunting. True crime in general is haunting. It's a hugely popular genre because I think all people at the end of the day have a need to know, a desire to know, and a fear that it could happen to them. So I think by exploring true crime, by examining these cases, we're exploring and examining things within ourselves. And we all possess some level of inner truth that we have to come to terms with. My inner truth is I need to know why things are the way they are. True crime provides me with the ability to ask those questions, to dig into it as much as I can. And even though I may never get all of the answers, I can keep trying. So, all the cases, even cases I haven't covered. Yeah, that's everything. Everything draws me in. Everything haunts me. I want to thank you guys for submitting your questions. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. I think I'm definitely going to cut this video up because, I don't know how long I've been doing this, but I assume it's been a while. There was a total of 42 questions. So thanks again for all of your support. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you for listening. And thank you for caring about these cases. Thank you for giving me your opinions, asking questions, giving me your criticism, supporting the show, following on things like Twitter, Instagram. If you're not already doing that, give it a shot. A special thanks to my patrons who I submitted this form to first and gave them first dibs at the questions. Their support means a lot to me, and I know I send it back stickers, but I have plans of doing a lot more for you guys in the future. I'm actually working right now on a new donation tier. Everyone, people who donate on PayPal, people who support through Patreon, people who retweet my tweets, people who like my stuff on Instagram, people who share on Facebook, you're all part of this podcast. You may not know that, but you are, because if it wasn't for you, I would just be a guy talking into a microphone and no one would be listening and no one would care. So I appreciate every level of interest you show and all the care and concern you show for these cases and the families and the victims. So thanks everybody so much, and I'll see you later.